Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back once again for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be reviewing the documentary The Minimalists, Less is Now. So basically, The Minimalist is centered entirely around a concept called minimalism, as evidenced in the title. It's about this idea of living with less stuff in your life and only living with the essential items that you need. Clothes, food, a roof over your head, anything important like that is what you need to have in your life. And even then, you should only have what's necessary. You should only have the necessary amount of that stuff. The documentary is produced by two friends named Joshua Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus, and I apologize in advance if I'm not saying that name properly at all. So basically, these two friends, they grew up together from childhood, they go into adulthood, they end up relating to each other through similar family backgrounds that they had from growing up. They both lived in poverty, and they both wanted to achieve the American dream together. Once they kind of achieve that dream in the form of their work life, they get into big, high-paying sales jobs. They end up buying a bunch of stuff, a lot of personal possessions. They go on all sorts of trips across the world, spent as much of their money as they could on all that sort of stuff, and yet they found their lives being unfulfilled. And through a variety of different personal circumstances that affect both of those guys, they end up coming to the realization that they weren't really satisfied with the American dream as they thought that they would have been. Joshua ended up discovering the concept of minimalism. I don't quite remember how, but he ended up sharing that concept with his friend Ryan shortly after he started applying it in his own life. And after Ryan started applying that to his own life, they started thinking, hey, this is a really good idea. We should probably start spreading this message around. So they both started a blog together, and the end result was something that they could never imagine. It skyrocketed. It was immediately successful. They started a podcast, and they have another Netflix documentary, actually. I haven't watched that yet. I'm going to try and watch that as soon as I can whenever I do have free time. But it's just really interesting to see how their success came about by just a random idea that they happened to find was really interesting. So the things that I liked about this film was that it talks a lot about passion. This idea that you should be following what you're passionate about and not necessarily following the crowd. Because all too often, it's very easy to get lost in the wave of ads that keep assaulting us day to day in the technology that we use. Word of mouth, whenever friends are talking to us, family, anyone in general, they can pass the word about something that they think is cool or something that they're using that in their opinion is benefiting their life, and we think to ourselves, maybe I should have that in my life too. But we don't really stop to ask ourselves, do I really need that piece of stuff in my life? Or is it just something that sounds really cool? And I really like how they explored that in depth in this documentary. I think the passion part connects to minimalism in the sense that you should be as original as possible. You shouldn't be trying to copy other people. You shouldn't be trying to keep up with the Jonases, although that's really difficult because, again, we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people all the time. And I think minimalism is a good challenge to apply oneself to it so that you can kind of keep tabs on this notion that we have of always comparing ourselves to other people. And I think it really helps to connect back and be present to what's really important in one's life. This documentary does a great job in examining that concept. The only thing that I didn't really like when I was watching this documentary was that it for some reason had a connection to work. And I understand that whenever you work a job, you end up getting money. And what do people spend that money on? Lots of stuff. That connection makes sense. But this idea of working long hours, like 60, 70, 80 hours, however many hours, and somehow connecting it to buying too much stuff is a little bit of a fallacy, because it doesn't really matter how many hours you're working in the day. What ultimately matters is how much money you're spending. You could be working 40 hours, you could be 60 hours, you could be unemployed, and you could still be buying too much stuff. Even in the documentary itself, it shows how easy it is these days for people to get credit cards and max them out just as simple as 1, 2, 3. It's all too easy to do that. And you don't necessarily need to be working a stressful job or a long hour job in order to afford all that stuff, or at least all of the expensive stuff. People are always going to be buying things all the time, regardless of whether they're cheap or expensive. In fact, I would argue it's too easy for people to buy stuff on the cheap that they don't really need. So I think if they spent more time exploring the work week, the hours that people work, and how it all connects to stuff in general, I think I would have been able to appreciate that aspect of the film a lot more. But overall, I thought it was an excellent documentary. It's really short. It's only about an hour long, so you don't really have much to lose if you're not much of a fan of it. Although I can't imagine anyone not enjoying this film, because it covers a very important aspect of society, and that's people shop way too much, and often for things that they don't need. And even the documentary itself is basically saying all this stuff that we have, I mean, you don't even have to be a hoarder, because most of us are pretty much organized hoarders anyway. We already have too much stuff. We just have a pretty good idea of setting it up so it doesn't look totally terrible. Organized chaos, if you will. If you're a person who feels like they have too much stuff in their lives and you feel like you could do with much less clutter, I think you would really enjoy this film, because it doesn't just go into the aspect of stuff, but it also goes a little bit more into why we have that stuff. And it goes into a lot of social commentary, which is stuff that I always enjoy, having a sociology background myself. But yeah, those were my overall impressions of The Minimalists. I apologize if this video wasn't as informative as it could have been. I'm still new to vlogging in general, so the next few videos are going to be a little rough around the edges in that regard, but I promise I'm going to get better more as I go along. So in the meantime, thanks for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, stay tuned for the next video, where next time I review the Korean comedy, What Happened with Mr. Cha. Oh, just as a quick side note, because I'm literally reading my notes as I'm doing this video, it ends on a call to action challenge where it challenges the viewer at the end of the film itself to take part in Minimalist Challenge, where you ditch 1 piece of stuff on day 1, and then 2 stuff on day 2, 3 stuff on day 3, so on and so forth. So I like that it ends on a call to action, because it really brings all the concepts together at the end, what you learn from Ryan and Joshua's perspectives, and you get a chance to put everything into perspective. So I really like that they ended on the call to action. Anyways, that's the end of the video. Bye-bye.